acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So, corporeal politics. My research centres on the undervalued and underrepresented older experienced dancer, the professional older dancer. It investigates ageism, aesthetics, and longevity in today's ballet and contemporary dance culture. These dancers are redefining what the older dancing body can do. I want to know why the older trained body is not valued in the current Western dance culture. So I am seeking the cultural value, validation and visibility for the older experienced dancer. Dance, as we know, is ephemeral, but through their performances, we observe their danced history through their bodies. They are bodies of knowledge. They may appear to have the default body, but they are rebelling against the usual aesthetics that dance aspires to, and I celebrate their corporeal difference. The research has gathered voices to a survey from 37 dancers in Europe, the USA, Canada, Israel, and Australia. We know dancers talk with their bodies, that's a given. But to actually hear them discuss their process, their bodies, performances is unusual and deeply relevant. My research has aimed to give a voice to these dancers and to display visually, through film and word, the corporeality and danced histories of these senior artists. We are talking aesthetics and politics. It is time to see them dance, hear their voices, and value them for what they are, a living archive. So when is it time to farewell dance, Yvonne Rainer asked. As Kathleen White acknowledges, ageism saturates dance culture, in which the dancer has to accept the undefended aspects of age. In fact, it appears to be a profession that just as you are beginning to grow up, it is deemed appropriate for you to retire. As a younger dancer, I too participated in the unwritten sanction of ageism aimed towards older dancers, and not really knowing why. The mutterings of, oh my God, why aren't you dead yet, at auditions, we've all done it. It wasn't until I enrolled at Laban in the late 1980s that I too became the discriminated one. At the tender age of 29, I was known affectionately as Miss P. P for pensioner. As dance scholar and older experienced dancer Mark Edward has remarked, he's a dancer in his 40s, I had become a trespasser on a dance territory that no longer belonged to me, and that if I were to participate, I would at worst be a dancing parody of my former self. Pat Caddison, a mere 75. She said, as you know, she's a Yvonne Rainer collaborator and fellow founder of the Judson Theatre. She said, I'm not happy unless I can dance, so I plan to do it until I die. But she is mindful of stating, dancing is not the problem. Surviving in the dance profession is. Again, Mark Edward writes, the idea of a professional dancer continuing to dance above and beyond a certain age in Western culture is somehow deemed a social faux pas. Which of course takes us to Martha Graham, who was absolutely adamant that she was going to keep dancing until she died. She had no intention of conforming to the ageism or the usual aesthetics. She said, a dancer more than any other human being dies two deaths. The first, the physical, and when the powerfully trained body will no longer respond. I only wanted to dance, and without dancing, I wished to die. Mortality is something that keeps cropping up. So many dancers claim that dance for them will continue until that time. It is a calling that sociologists Stephen Wainwright and Brian Turner state, being a dancer is not something that you do, it is something that you are. Pina Bausch created Kontakthof in 1978, but reimagined the work with an older cast in 2010, fully aware of the history these bodies conveyed as they cavorted and confronted the ageist viewer. She expanded their visibility by drawing attention to the lived experience of these dancers and how history could be displayed positively through the body. Siobhan Davis' work, Bridge the Distance, here with Patrick Hardiama, who is with us at the festival. Davis could see the gifts imbued through the bodies of older professional dancers, and she saw Patrick's lived experience of dance as an absolute asset to the work. She stated that dance then was seen as physical manifestation of youth, vibrancy, high jumps and technical expertise, and I loved it when I see something that is as thoughtful as Patrick's one simple move. I asked Patrick to tell me how he felt being given this opportunity at the time, and bearing in mind I did actually see this performance at Sadler's Wells. It was 1985 and I had just turned 40, the oldest member of the company, and along with Anka also the longest standing, but I was still able to dance at a very high level. I knew that my technique was refined, and I was confident that I was able to bring meaningfulness to any physical choreography. NDT3, the renowned, internationally renowned company formed by Czech choreographer Jiří Kylián in 1991 for dancers between the age of 40 and death. Kylián states, "These dancers bring their pride, their skills, their talents, their fantasy. You know they live here. That's how the performance becomes so powerful." I interviewed Sabine Kupferberg and Gerard Lemaitre in 2015 and asked her how it felt on that first performance. And she said, "I think the performance was not believing it would happen because it was a very courageous thing to do. And when I look back at the performance now, I think we were amazingly physical. We were not 40 or 50, or looking like dancers of a normal, mature age. Absolutely not in an age when you think they should do something else." And Kylián also said, of course, it is a little history of dance that is inside them. Dance critic Eva van Schaik backed up Kylián's venture, saying that mention for the elder dancer should be seen not as a justified cause for the involved dancer, but also as an artistic need for dance in general. My research has taken me to London, Stockholm, The Hague, Berlin, and all over Australia to gather voices of older experienced dancers. And here are some of the amazing dancers who feature in the research. Of course, the amazing Elizabeth Karen Dowman and Bold's patron. She says, "You're not trying to make your body like this perfect other. It's about going inside, working from the inside, acknowledging and respecting your own body as it is now, in the present." And of course, Eileen, 104, who I had a very funny dinner with, and she said, "I thought I was 35. Well, what is my age?" Which I thought was just darling. Louise Lecavalier, who I interviewed in 2013 at the Adelaide Festival, and she said, "People are surprised when associating the kind of dancing I do with age, the age I have, as if someone at 54 should be handicapped. The dance I create is for everyone, not just older people. And goodbye to all the simplistic notions we make about getting older. I do not feel old, and I do not feel so mature either." Siv Anders, 79, former ballerina with the Kullberg Ballet, here a performance with Heggie Hagenrud's Use My Body Whilst It's Still Young. She says, "Don't overdance that you can't dance." Hagenrud made this work because she realized there was a lack of older dancers. We just don't see them. My particular friend, Charlotte Offerholm, whose film is being shown on the 4th floor from company Jeu de la Vie Stockholm, the only dancer I know who has a hip replacement and a total ankle reconstruction and still dances. In 2016, she mentioned to me a press release, and it said, "I have no idea how old she is, but you can see she has some wrinkles and things. But when she dances, she is forever young." Susie Crowe, former soloist with Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet and Ballet in Small Spaces at Oxford, she makes a really good point. She says, "I'm not sure that the establishment knows yet where to place mature professionals." Australia's Leanne Benjamin, former prima ballerina with the Royal Ballet Company, known in her late 40s as Benjamin Button by the press, she states, the press always mentioned her age. She said she was good, not because she was 47. Brian Lucas. I think I am aware that pushing myself doesn't just apply physically. Pushing myself is to do with performance, and the physicality is part of that. Glenn Murray of Invisible Practice, who says, I have to walk the talk. This is my body now. It serves me well. I'm quite confident of my instrument, and I think now that I am working perhaps a little more intellectually than my instrument will perform. And of course, your own amazing Australian dance artists, Anke Frankenhausen, Patrick Harding, Irma, Susan Barling, and Ross Phillip, who we just don't see enough of, four exemplary dancers who hold a lifetime of lived dance experience, former members of London Contemporary Dance Theatre and Sydney Dance Company, and who have been producing work in Sydney with Ken Unsworth for over 20 years. And you'll be seeing Anke performing this evening. The latest one is Momentum Dance in Western Australia. Liz Cornish's company, created in 2017, is an ensemble featuring dancers aged over 50. A company that considers history, memories, and artistry are treasures that an older dancer brings to the stage. Dance on Berlin, an initiative created by Dylan Ritter that focuses on the artistic excellence of dancers aged 40 plus, whose experience, charisma, and dramatic power, in fact, their entire dance life is present on stage. Funded by the German government and producing work with eminent choreographers, and they are changing the usual face of dance. Since its inception in 2015, they are now moving to their second edition of the company, and it was announced last June that their funding of 1.8 million euros will continue for a further 5 years. They also form part of EU project Dance On, Pass On, Dream On, comprised of 9 companies, which aims at generating a European strategy for sustainable dance praxis, valuing age and embodied knowledge on stage and in society. It is a project to honour the value of embodied knowledge and to counteract preconceived notions of what it means to be old. Betsy Gregory, former artistic director of Dance Umbrella and part of the Elders Project, who performed at the Elixir Festival in 2014 in London, she said, in recent years, we have been living in a culture that is so youth-orientated that people have forgotten that older people can dance, or maybe they thought they never could. I know there is a shift in Europe that is beginning to acknowledge that older experienced dancers are integral with creativity, life experience, and corporeal difference, thus enriching the cultural landscape by keeping these mature movers visible. But is this sentiment shared here in Australia? And how can we mirror what appears to be a corporeal movement by acknowledging our senior artists? Kathleen White writes, and I really agree with this, to deny the older dancer participation is to deny audiences the full power and pleasure of artists who have ripened and fully developed their experience and grace. And finally, I will close with this beautiful quote by Christopher Roman, former artistic director of Dance on Berlin, who's currently in Africa, performing William Forsythe's A Quiet Evening of Dance. Dance is a language we speak fluently. Thank you.